I'd like to issue a formal apology to our Dynasty listeners. We have not been servicing you guys enough these days. We've been talking way too much about redraft, but today I'm here to make it up to you. Today we're going to break down Dynasty trade targets by position. Of course, we have a new Dynasty trade value chart live on Flock Fantasy right now. And we're going to go over some Dynasty in-season trading strategy at the beginning of this video so that you guys know exactly how you should be approaching trade targets during the season in Dynasty versus redraft. Obviously, it varies quite a bit. So let's get things kicked off by talking about Dynasty strategy in general. Now, in Dynasty Fantasy Football, the most important thing you can do in the offseason, during the season, whenever time of year it is properly evaluate your roster. And evaluating your roster is a crucial part of Dynasty Fantasy Football because it determines your best course of action. Now, it's been 3 games into the season. You guys probably are 0-3, 1-2, 2-1, or 3-0. And that is probably a result of the roster that you built up. And hopefully going into the season, you guys performed the accurate reads on your Dynasty rosters that you should have been so that you would have not been surprised by your record currently. If you determine yourself to be a true contender, you should be 2-1 or 3-0 right now. During the season, this becomes all the more important because it is the most active time of the year for your league. Everybody's checking the app daily. Everybody's going through, setting their lineups, making trade offers, that kind of thing. So it is very important you get an accurate read on your roster this time of year. And of course, you can use our My Teams feature to load your roster in, put your sleeper ID in, it loads your team. And you can see, as an example, this is one of the leagues that I'm in, and it shows you exactly based on the expert that you select or just based on our overall expert consensus there, you can see how good your team is relative to the rest of your league. So based on that information, plus, of course, you have a couple games now of data to determine how good your team is going to be, you should be able to understand what your goal is this season. You're probably in one of 4 situations right now, and the first of that being true contender. Your team is really good. You're trying to win the championship. Your second being that you're a tank job. You're not trying to win this year. You're trying to collect picks. You're trying to tank your pick for the first overall pick in 2025. Your team could be a house money contender, which on this channel, of course, means that you have a very good built-up wealth of picks, but you also have a young team that if things break right, maybe you can compete this year and have a top 3 to 4 team, and you're getting some information on that now, of course, that some of your players maybe have hit or some of your players have missed. And then the fourth situation, which is the least advantageous position to be in Dynasty, is that you're somewhere in the middle. You're stuck in limbo. Your team, maybe you thought you were a contender coming into this year, but your players aren't performing up to the level that you want them to perform at. So the easiest two, like I said, are a true contender and a tank job. Your goal and your kind of course of action is very easy for you. If a true contender is going into a Dynasty team and you're 2-1, 3-0, you have a top 3 to 4 projection team in your league. You might be weaker at one position. Maybe you could stand to upgrade somewhere. But for the most part, you kind of know what you're doing and you understand that your team is probably good enough to win as is. And then, of course, with a tanking team, you probably understand that any production that pops up on your roster, for example, I have one tanking team that had J.K. Dobbins on it. So J.K. Dobbins wasn't considered to be a good asset going into the year, but now he's producing. So I can probably look to sell that guy off for picks and vice versa. You are not buying any players or buying any production when you're tanking. You're looking to get that production off of your team, acquire more draft capital, and kind of be on your merry way into the next future seasons. But the more challenging 2 teams to determine how you should be trading during the year are house money teams. And again, you have a young roster, you have picks in the bank. Maybe you've started the season 2-1. Maybe you've started the season 3-0 because some of your young players, maybe you had like Jordan Mason on your roster, for example, are producing. With these types of teams, it can be very tempting to shove your chips in the middle. And I think everybody knows what it feels like. Everybody's made this mistake in Dynasty before, and I've made this mistake as well, where you see a house money team developing, you see, oh, all my young receivers are producing. Maybe you had Malik Neighbors and Romo Dunze and all these guys that you didn't necessarily think were going to produce year one. But keep in mind that you spent adequate time building this roster, adequate time and energy building a very strong team with a good pick bank built up, evaluating your chances of legitimately winning the championship. Honestly, look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I have a young team that's producing right now, but is it honestly the top 3 to 4 best team in terms of production in my league? If the answer is no, you should not be blowing your load on every productive running back that you can possibly get your hands on. You should not be blowing your load on every productive wide receiver that you can possibly get your hands on. The key is to pick your spots, i.e. trade targets that maybe have lost a lot of value because they're like injured or something, and understand when your house money team is legitimately ready to make a move. Don't make that mistake. I'm sure a lot of you guys have teams like this because if you've been following this channel, we obviously like to build out teams like this where you don't have a lot of running back production, built up a lot of young wide receivers, young quarterbacks, young tight ends, and you might be like, holy crap, my team is coming to fruition. The fruits of my labor are right in front of me. I need to go buy Josh Jacobs right now. I need to go buy Derrick Henry right now. Be careful. Make sure your team is actually in position to potentially make a move like that, and also that you're going to be set for the future if you do make a move like that. And then the other situation, like I said, this is one that I would imagine new Dynasty players or Dynasty players who have just found this channel would be in, which is that you look at your team, you thought you were going to be really contending this year, you thought your team was going to be a top 3 to 4 team, and your productive pieces just are not looking as good as you thought they were going to. Over the next few weeks, you might have some tough decisions to make, and a big reason for this could be because you had a lot of injuries happen to your team, and you had Christian McCaffrey going into the year, and he's not playing. You had Isaiah Pacheco going into the year, and he's not playing. Any major injuries that you've suffered are going to hamper how good your competitive window is. This situation is the absolute last type of team who should be buying players. You should not be buying production if your team is stuck in limbo and you're thinking, hey, if I just added Stephon Diggs and Cooper Kupp and Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry, then I'd have a great starting roster and I'd be able to compete in this league. That is the biggest mistake that new Dynasty players can make. And the reason why is because if your team isn't good enough to win, you can't look yourself in the mirror and honestly say, my team is a top 3 to 4 team in my Dynasty league. You should be selling and retooling for future years, not digging yourself a further hole and selling off future picks for short-term competitive assets. So definitely, if your team is stuck in limbo, you are better off being a seller rather than a buyer. And as we go through these trade targets by position, because that is the second part of this video, I'm going to talk about what types of teams should be buying each player, because I think that's definitely important for you guys to quickly first make the evaluation on your team or your Dynasty teams if you're in multiple leagues. And again, you can use our My Teams feature over on Flock Fantasy. And of course, this Dynasty trade value chart is also live on Flock Fantasy right now, as are my updated Dynasty 1 quarterback and Superflex rankings. So you can use these tools to become a better Dynasty player. And if you actually sign up using promo code FSE for an annual subscription, you save 6 months, 30% off. You can actually submit your team for review. So if you're wondering, I don't know if I'm a contender, I don't know if I'm a house money team, you can actually ask me and I can review your team and give you one of those reviews, and those come free with annual subscriptions. So definitely check that out. And of course, all of this information is over on Flock Fantasy. But let's get into the running back buys. So I'm going to go through each position, and basically the way I got to a buy here is I ranked all these players. I went through, did a sweeping update of my Dynasty rankings. I looked at where Keep Trade Cut had these players ranked, and if they're way lower on a player than I am, they became a hard buy. If they're a little bit lower on a player than I am, they became a soft buy, and vice versa with the sells. If they're a little bit higher on the player than I am, they became a soft sell, so on and so forth. If they're about in line with my value of the player, they were just considered a hold, and that's kind of what you would do with those type of assets. So the only hard buy that I came up with here at the running back position is Jonathan Brooks. I have him at RB11. Danny actually has him at RB9. Jonathan Brooks is currently valued around like 12 to 15 on the open market in Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues, according to Keep Trade Cut. Again, with Jonathan Brooks, the thesis has not changed. Just because he came into the season injured and we haven't seen him on the field yet, the thesis has not changed. He was an excellent prospect. We expect him to get a great workload. He has top 50 draft capital. The Panthers suddenly look a lot better with Andy Dalton at quarterback. And if you are a house money team specifically or a tank job team specifically, you should be sending offers for Jonathan Brooks right now, because the type of prospect that he was and the type of asset that he is dictates that he can actually climb and ascend to a top 5 Dynasty running back as soon as he's on the field. And because he's out of sight, out of mind right now to the redraft brain that leaks into Dynasty, there's a good chance that you can get a good value on him. And as this video goes on, I'm going to be showcasing our Trade Finder tool over on Flock Fantasy. You can see that you can get Jonathan Brooks for Mark Andrews right now. You can get Jonathan Brooks and T. Higgins for Jaden Reed and Jamison Williams right now. So again, you can get a good value on a potential top 5 Dynasty running back as soon as he's back on the field for guys that are not needle-moving assets. And Jonathan Brooks absolutely will be a needle-moving asset if he becomes a top 8 to top 5 Dynasty running back the second he's on the field. So if you are a house money team specifically, and you are inquiring about players like Jonathan Brooks who could rise in value and also give you good production at the end of the year, Jonathan Brooks is the perfect asset to go out and buy. And again, if you're a tank job too, looking for running back production in the long term, I think Brooks makes a lot of sense for a team like that as well. Now let's get into some contending buys. Now, especially at the running back position, the only real reason you'd be buying a running back, sans a guy like Jonathan Brooks, is because you're looking to win. You're looking to buy production, because typically if you're not a contending team, you don't want running backs on your roster. You don't want to uphold the risk of this guy getting injured or losing value or losing touches, because this position is extremely volatile year to year based on who's getting the volume. So Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, and Rachaad White are all competitive running backs right now that, to me, are true contender buys if you are looking for production. Now, with Travis Etienne, he is the most expensive of this group, and the reason that I think he's a good buy right now is because the Jags are at an all-time low. They just got wiped on Monday Night Football by the Buffalo Bills. Everybody saw it. It was a primetime game. But the thing that hasn't changed for Travis Etienne is his workload. He's still been a 70% opportunity share guy. He's still been getting the targets. He's still been getting the routes. He's still getting the goal line work once we actually get some for this Jaguars offense. So if you can get Travis Etienne right now for a singular first-round pick, or you can get Travis Etienne right now in a package deal like this one, where you're also getting Bucky Irving for a singular first-round pick, or you can upgrade from a competitive running back like a James Conner and Alvin Kamara, somebody who's gotten off to a great start, he is the type of guy that I would 100% be willing to go after, especially because for me, when I have a true contender, when I have a team that maybe I do have like a James Conner on it, or I do have like an Alvin Kamara on it, who's like, you'd only have a player like that on your roster if you were actually trying to win. Sometimes I like to take players like that and I like to upgrade into more longevity running backs who are going to give me similar production. And that is exactly the type of player Travis Etienne is, where you can take somebody who's being more productive than him right now and use a second round pick or even potentially more to upgrade to a guy like that to help increase your productive window. Where if you held a guy like Alvin Kamara, you're probably shit out of luck this time next year when he's not getting the workload that you're looking for. Whereas Travis Etienne, of course, was a first round pick. We expect him to still be a productive running back for the next couple of years. That is the type of move that I would be looking to make, and I think Travis Etienne is the premier contending buy low running back on the market right now. The next guy that I think is a good buy low is Josh Jacobs, and I think the reason for that is pretty simple, is that Jordan Love is coming back, and Josh Jacobs has been getting a good workload in the meantime, and once Jordan Love is back on the field, this offense suddenly might be one of the best in the NFL, and Josh Jacobs, even though he's a little bit older, even though he has a lot of touches under his belt, he's probably a 1 to 3 year asset at most. You're getting very good production for not expensive price tags right now, because I really do think, both from a redraft and a dynasty standpoint, that he is going to be a lot better once Jordan Love is throwing the football for this team. The next guy that I think is a good contending buy is Rachaad White. And I think the reason I think he's a good buy is because the entire fantasy community is, jizzing all over Bucky Irving right now, because there was a throwaway comment at the end of one of Todd Bowles' press conferences where he said, yeah, Bucky Irving deserves more opportunities. But as a Buccaneers fan, I watched the press conference, and I'm telling you right now, that was not the takeaway that you guys should have had from this press conference. The question was, why was Rachaad White out there so much? Because Bucky Irving was producing, and he was the hot hand in that game. And Todd Bowles defended Rachaad White and said, the reason Rachaad White is out there, and he's been playing 70% of the snaps in every single game so far, is because he's better in pass protection. He's better as a receiver. The throwaway comment at the end was, yeah, Bucky Irving deserves more opportunities. Now, every press clipping, every fantasy football news site picked it up and now thinks that Bucky Irving is going to be the workhorse in this backfield. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, as a Buccaneers fan, they really like Rachaad White. It doesn't matter that Bucky Irving is more efficient on his carries. Rachaad White is a great receiver, and he has the size to carry a workload and be the guy in short yardage. When you're getting the receiving work and the short yardage work, that is the important stuff. Bucky Irving is going to have 10 to 12 really efficient carries every single week, but that is the role he's going to stay in my opinion. Unless Rachaad White goes down, Bucky Irving is not going to see much of an increased role. So people who are excited about Bucky Irving, and don't worry, I'll talk about him in the cells, I'm telling you should be buying Rachaad White instead, because even though he's inefficient on the ground, he gets the workload, he gets the touches, and that is the most important thing at the running back position. Rachaad White right now, you can get him for Nick Chubb in a 3 and a 4. You can get him for a singular second round pick. You can get him for Deontay Johnson. He is the type of running back asset that I think you should be buying if you're a true contender who is in need of some RB2 production. I think everybody's overreacting to what has happened the last couple of games. The bottom line is, this is a good offense and you want pieces of it, and Baker Mayfield targets this guy and gives him a lot of touches. So you definitely want to buy into Rachaad White right now. I know it seems a little bit scary. It seems a little bit uncertain, but I think the roles in this backfield are going to stay the same, and that is me as a Buccaneers fan. I have no real allegiance to either of these running backs. I just want my team to win. Rachaad White is the guy that the coaching staff and the general manager have allegiance to get the ball as many times as they possibly want, and he's still getting a great workload despite Bucky Irving outproducing him or being more efficient than him. Ramondre Stevenson, also a guy that I think people are down on right now, given the terrible stinker he had on Thursday night last week. But he was a top 12 running back in PPR in the first 2 games of the season. And right now, you can buy low on him. And the reason I say he's a buy low is because I think Drake May will make this offense better whenever he gets in there. And Jacoby Brissett already got kind of like pseudo benched, and it looks like it's going to be time for Drake May to come in soon. And Ramondre Stevenson not only has a long-term contract to tether himself to Drake May, because we saw that happen before the season started, but Ramondre Stevenson also looks good, commands a workload, and if Drake May elevates the play of this offense, they still want to run the ball, they still want to be efficient in the red zone, and Ramondre Stevenson will be a huge beneficiary if Drake May comes out and has a great rookie season and moves this offense more than Jacoby Brissett is moving this offense right now. So I do think Stevenson is a great contending buy. For those of you guys that want a longevity piece, you could probably sell off a James Conner, a David Montgomery, and Alvin Kamara, somebody who's older, who's producing, for a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who's going to give you good production still, but also have a lot more longevity than those other guys. And that, again, is the type of contending move that I like making. Trey Benson, the next buy that I'm looking for here, the thesis for him was always late season upside. So to me, I don't think anything has changed with Trey Benson. James Conner looks good. Obviously, he's getting a workload, but he is older. He has suffered a number of injuries, and Trey Benson, the prospect, is raw. So I actually think this is good for Trey Benson to sit and learn behind a veteran, have a chance to learn the playbook, learn and understand how to play the running back position at the pro level. If you are a house money team or a tank job team, Trey Benson is the type of guy that I would absolutely love to go after, because he was a good prospect, a great athlete, has a good prospect profile, had good draft capital, and I think going forward into the future, you want pieces of this Arizona Cardinals offense. Look at Kyler Murray's play right now. Look at Marvin Harrison's play right now. Look at how Drew Petzig is calling this offense. Trey Benson is at a very low point in his price right now because he's not on the field making plays, but once that happens, he's going to be a pretty much untouchable dynasty asset, just like Jonathan Brooks will be when he's back on the field. So both of these top 2 running backs from this class, you should be out there buying them. I know Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving, all these guys look good. They weren't the best running backs in the class. Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson were the best running backs in this class. So definitely make sure to go out and send some offers, specifically if you are a house money or a tank job type of team. Now let's talk about Tyrone Tracy, Jalen Warren, and Chase Brown, all guys that are kind of lower end buys that I feel like could have their value spike by season's end. With Tyrone Tracy, he's looked good so far. He's got that receiving workload that we want to see, but Devin Singletary is carrying the load there. Again, I don't know what's going to come of this Giants backfield, but I know Tyrone Tracy has looked good enough that I want to invest in him. Same goes for Jalen Warren. He's been banged up to start the year, but I know he's a good running back. And Chase Brown, too. He's eating into Zach Moss's workload more and more. He's getting touches. He's being efficient on them. I think that better days are ahead for all 3 of these guys. The types of teams that I think should acquire them are teams that are making like stuck in limbo tier down. So like if you're a stuck in limbo team and you realize, hey, I don't need Alvin Kamara because I'm not going to win this year, and you wanted to tier down to like Jalen Warren, a 2nd round pick, that's the type of trade that I would make to get Alvin Kamara off my team, assuming you can't get better assets long term. Those are the types of moves that I would make. And also house money teams could use guys like Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, and Tyrone Tracy too, because in the future they might be more valuable than they are right now. So let's get into the running back sells. And these first 4 guys, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, and David Montgomery, it's very crucial that I make this point. They are not sells if you are a true contender. If you're a true contender, you want Alvin Kamara on your team. You want Derrick Henry on your team. You probably want Christian McCaffrey on your team once he comes back. You want David Montgomery on your team because these guys are helpful to help you win a championship, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. So if you are a true contender, meaning you have a top 2, top 3, top 4 team in your league, you probably don't need to shop these guys. You should just ride out your production, and there's also probably a very good chance that the types of teams that roster these players are true contenders. But, however, if you find yourself as a team who is stuck in limbo, meaning you're like the 7th best team in your league, 6th best team in your league, or you're somehow a tanking team or a house money team that has these players, these guys are sells, in my opinion. Alvin Kamara, producing at a high level right now. I would want to leverage that production, like I said, into longevity plus production. If you can sell Alvin Kamara to get up to Travis Etienne, to get up to Josh Jacobs, to get up to Ramondre Stevenson, if you're a house money team, you wanted to go buy low on Isaiah Pacheco, or you wanted to go, again, use these players to even get up all the way to Jahmyr Gibbs, to Devon Achane, to Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, somebody like this. That is how I would be using Alvin Kamara right now. I think a good example of leveraging the production into longevity plus production is this Rachaad White in a 2nd round pick deal for Alvin Kamara. Getting a first-round pick obviously would be great if you're a house money team or a rebuild or something like that. Keon Coleman plus a first-round pick, even better. Alvin Kamara in this one deal with a first-rounder and a third-rounder sold probably for a better first-round pick, I would assume. And then Alvin Kamara also and a third for a first-round pick. These are the types of deals I would be looking to make for Kamara because there's buyers in your league right now. People who want this production, the production that Kamara is putting up, and I'm still skeptical that he's going to do this the entire season because he's an older running back, dealt with injuries, a lot of touches under his belt. Definitely be wary of a guy like Alvin Kamara. But again, if you are a true contender, then definitely hold this guy. Derrick Henry, again, clearly not the same player in my opinion. He just had a blow-up game, so this is perfect timing for him. Pivoting off Derrick Henry for draft capital, again, any first-round pick, and he is off my team very easily if I'm not contending. Ramondre Stevenson, again, even if you are contending, I would explore a trade like that because Ramondre Stevenson is going to give you similar production, except he's much, much younger and has a much rosier outlook going into the future. So that is the type of move I would make with Derrick Henry. Christian McCaffrey is a weird one because I think everybody assumes that once he gets back on the field, he'll be elite, but we also don't know when that is. And we also don't know if the injury is going to affect him and affect his production or if he's going to suffer any setbacks or when he's actually going to play. I think there's a high chance that the teams who thought they were true contenders have Christian McCaffrey on their team. And the teams that are stuck in limbo right now are dealing with the fact that Christian McCaffrey is not playing for them, and he would be a huge piece of them being a true contender. So I think some of the teams that are stuck in limbo right now probably have Christian McCaffrey on them, and I think it may be smart to shop him off of your team to a true contender, try and increase longevity, like I said, try and recoup draft capital for next year. You can see a trade here. Kyron Williams in a second-round pick for Christian McCaffrey. That makes a lot of sense. Trading off Christian McCaffrey to get up to Puka Nacua makes a lot of sense. Buying low on like Tua makes a lot of sense in a super flex league. All those kind of trades involving Christian McCaffrey I think make a lot of sense because if you have Christian McCaffrey, there's a very good chance that you're not as competitive as you want it to be because Christian McCaffrey is not out there producing for you. And then same goes for David Montgomery. Again, if you're a competitive team with a short shelf life of winning a championship, just hold him. But at the same time, you could probably use him to upgrade at later points. Now, getting into some of these guys that are young backs who have really produced so far. Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving. If you drafted these guys in your rookie drafts, congrats. Because you probably spent a third-round pick on them, a fourth-round pick on them, and keep trade cut market value dictates that you can get a second for them right now, if not an early to mid-second in a lot of very reactive leagues. It's one thing to hit on a draft pick, right? It feels great that you hit on Braylon Allen or Bucky Irving, but let's understand, are they at their ceiling in terms of value right now, or are they going to continue to increase in value? Because that's an important thing to understand with young running backs. Now, if Braylon Allen were on the Dallas Cowboys, and he was the lead back, and he was getting all the touches, he would have a ceiling value of top 5 dynasty running back. That would be his ceiling value. But unfortunately, he plays for the New York Jets. And given Breece Hall's ability, he's the RB2 in dynasty right now. He's the best running back talent, in my opinion, in the entire league. It's likely that the Jets are not going to use Braylon Allen in the manner that would dictate he needs to be used to live up to an early second-round price tag or even a late first-round price tag. So given Braylon Allen has 2 more years of Breece Hall in his rookie deal to deal with, and also the fact that Breece Hall's the type of talent that probably gets extended by the Jets, that leaves Braylon Allen as a handcuff with standalone value until 2027 when he hits free agency, or at best case scenario, the end of the 2025 season if Breece Hall is not extended by the Jets. So this is not a good situation for Braylon Allen to be in. It's great that he's a good running back, and we all know he's talented now. It's very evident. You can see it with your own eyes. Unfortunately, running back is an opportunity-based position. So if you can get an early to mid-second rounder for Braylon Allen, take your instant profit. You spent a third or a fourth round rookie pick on this guy. Take your early to mid second round pick, sell him off of your roster. As much as it sucks because you know he's a good player and that's valuable, you're probably not going to get early to mid second round value out of a standalone handcuff with elite winning upside if Breece Hall were to go down. Because the other thing too is that Breece Hall is not likely to go down. He's a young running back with not a huge major injury history outside of the ACL tear a couple years ago. So again, take your incremental profit out of Braylon Allen and be on your merry way. Same goes for Bucky Irving too. Again, I know Bucky Irving looks great and people think that he can win the job over Rachaad White. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm telling you right now, I don't think it's going to happen. And also too, Bucky Irving is undersized. Bucky Irving has to deal with a really good running back class coming in 2025. So even if Bucky Irving makes this a 50-50 split down the stretch of the season, Rachaad White's still under contract for 1 more year, and it's a great running back class coming up. I'd venture a guess to say that both of these guys, every dynasty manager has lucid dreams of Bucky Irving, the RB1, or Braylon Allen, the workhorse running back. But the reality is they're not in position to be those types of players. Todd Bowles is an old school coach. I'd say there's a strong chance that even if Bucky Irving won the job out over Rachaad White, they would add somebody or still use Rachaad White at a high degree. He's a handcuff with a standalone role. That's exactly what Bucky Irving is. I know everybody wants him to beat out Rachaad White, but I'm telling you guys, it's not going to happen. He's probably going to be a change of pace back the entirety of his rookie contract. Be happy that you hit on these two guys and cash out for early twos in 2025, because if you get an early second for these players, you can get a real difference-making prospect with that selection. Bucky Irving, some of these trades that you guys can see, going after Trey Benson using Bucky Irving is definitely a sharp move. Going after a buy low quarterback in a super flex league like Trevor Lawrence using Braylon Allen as a package deal, great move. Using Braylon Allen and getting a first round pick using Shakir and Jalen McMillan a third in that trade there, these are the types of incremental upgrades that you want to make to your roster to go and get real difference-making assets. Because as much as I like these guys, they're not difference-making assets yet. Unless Braylon Allen were to be traded to a different team or something like that, they are not difference-making assets currently. So I definitely think that you guys should cash out on these type of assets and go and get some significant difference makers. That was a lot on the running back position, but again, competitive running back strategy is really important in season. So we're going to kind of breeze through the rest of the positions here. Wide receiver buys, you guys can see, thankfully, these are more universal buys regardless of your team situation. Like Brandon Ayuk, Ladd McConkey, these types of players could be valuable to anybody, contenders, rebuilders, tank jobs, whoever. Brandon Ayuk, I know he's rusty right now, but it's understandable. He came into the season not doing a whole lot in training camp because he was holding out, not doing a whole lot in practice, but we have a 4-year sample of Brandon Ayuk being elite receiver. He is an excellent player, all-pro caliber dude. He's going to get back on track in the coming weeks. So if people are panicked on a dynasty perspective, obviously people are panicked from a redraft perspective, but people panicking from a dynasty perspective is just completely ludicrous to me, because he's still in a great offense, still a great player attached to this offense for a long time because of the big contract. He is going for singular first-round picks in a lot of dynasty leagues right now, and to me that is absolutely ridiculous. So go after Brandon Ayuk. He is an easy buy. Still a top 12 to 15 dynasty wide receiver that you can get for a mid to late projected first and maybe a third or something like that. Very easy buy, especially for contenders who are looking for a big time upgrade to their production. Ladd McConkey, tank jobs, rebuilders, house money teams, pay attention, because Ladd McConkey is off to a very strong start to his NFL career. I know it doesn't feel that way because he hasn't produced at a super high level. He's only averaging 9 PPR points per game, but through his first 3 games, he has at least a 20% target share in every single one, and he has a 27% target share on the season with a 29% targets per route run rate, and he just posted a season high in route participation. So Ladd McConkey, the breakout game is coming. The breakout season is coming here, and he is the type of guy that I would absolutely be going after, because as I talked about during the draft process, Ladd McConkey is the PPR stud that we all know can scam fantasy football the way that Amon-Ra St. Brown has done, the way that we saw Jackson Smith-Njigba do 2 weeks ago. That is the type of player Ladd McConkey is. And if you can get him plus a second and a third for Derek Carr in a super flex league right now, you have to go and do it. If you can use Brock Purdy and a second and tier down to Tua Tagovailoa and get Ladd McConkey as a throw-in, that is the type of trade that you need to be making right now. Contending teams could buy him. Rebuilding teams could buy him. I think the best team to buy Ladd McConkey is a team that is a house money team, looking to add more production in the future, but potentially for the rest of the season. Calvin Ridley, I think he's one of the better contending wide receiver throw-ins right now, because I think you can get him for a second-round pick, no problem, and potentially even a mid to late projected one for him, because the type of asset that Calvin Ridley is, he's a wide receiver 3. If you're in deep PPR dynasty leagues like I'm in, those guys have value, especially when they can give you big spike weeks like Calvin Ridley has shown last year with Jacksonville and so far this year with Tennessee that he is capable of doing. And I think the same is true for Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson. Again, don't worry about the reactivity week to week with these type of players. Obviously, Ridley is down this week. Last week he was up because he had the big game. Deontay Johnson and Christian Kirk had big games this week, so they're up. They're wide receiver 3s. They're wide receiver 3 PPR production pieces that are going to be 12 to 15 PPR points per game and have some spike weeks here and there. Those are the types of players you're bargaining for. They're worth mid to late second rounders for contenders. So if you want to go and buy them, if you need another wide receiver piece, they are the types of guys that I would be going after. And then the final buy here is Jalen Polk, because the market has overreacted to Jalen Polk's outlook. I think he was going to need some time to come in and kind of establish himself in this offense. And the same thesis is true for him as it was for Ramondre Stevenson. I think once Drake May comes in, this offense is going to elevate its play. This offense is going to look a lot better as a passing unit. And honestly, there's not really much I can point to Jalen Polk to say he's been overly impressive. He's not averaging a 30% targets per route run rate, and it's just a matter of when he gets on the field. He's not averaging, 2.0 yards per route run right now. It's more so that he's a rookie, learning the ropes, and he's running routes out there, and once Drake May comes in, I think that all of the stars are going to align for Jalen Polk because I believed in him as a prospect. That's really all it comes down to for me with Jalen Polk, so definitely send out some offers for him. You could probably get him for not much right now. You could probably get him for mid to late second rounders. You could probably get him as a throw-in for other deals. You could probably trade Bucky Irving and Braylon Allen for him straight up, no problem. If not, get a little bit of plus on top of that. So definitely go out and send some offers for those guys. Wide receiver sells. Not a whole lot of them. I think there's a pretty good balance on the wide receiver market according to Keep Trade Cut right now. Tyreek Hill, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Terry McLaurin, and Khalil Shakir are some of the wide receiver sells that I have listed here. The reason for that is Tyreek Hill is a competitive wide receiver, right? I think we all recognize that if you have Tyreek Hill on your team, you should be looking to win because he's old, and you need to win to make sure that holding him as an older asset is worth your time. But Tyreek Hill does not have Tua Tagovailoa right now, so I do think it's potentially worth your time if you're a team caught in limbo, which you might be if you have Tyreek Hill, to try and increase your longevity. Go after Garrett Wilson, go after Drake London, go after somebody that you can get up to using Tyreek Hill, the name value that Tyreek Hill has in that situation. So I've lowered him in my Dynasty wide receiver rankings. He was like wide receiver 13, 14, 15 for me coming into the year. He's now wide receiver 18 for me, but he's still holding at that wide receiver 12, 13, 14, 15 over on Keep Trade Cut. So that indicates that you can still get really good value for him, and he is the type of asset that if you're trying to tear it down, retool for next year, he's probably on your team because he's not producing at the level that you expected him to produce coming into the year. Jackson Smith-Njigba was a really good prospect, had a really big game in week 2, but at the same time, I think there's better wide receivers ahead of him that you can use him to get up to. And again, if you can get up to Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, something like that, Jackson Smith-Njigba might be the type of piece that you can use in a tier up. And then Khalil Shakir, I think, could be a bit of a sell right now because he's produced like a top 20 receiver to start the year. And I'm not sure that's going to continue with Keon Coleman getting his sea legs under him. Curtis Samuel started the season injured. Dalton Kincaid has been kind of quiet so far this year. I like Khalil Shakir, but he's valued as like wide receiver 42 in Dynasty right now. And to me, I think that's just a little bit high. I think he's worth about a mid to late second rounder, but you could probably get an early to mid second rounder in a lot of Dynasty markets. And then Terry McLaurin, perpetually basically a Dynasty sell for me because Terry McLaurin is just, he's not an elite receiver. He had a great game this week. He went over 100 yards, had a touchdown. Jaden Daniels looks good, but I would use that as leverage to get off of Terry McLaurin because we know what this guy's been his whole career. He's been a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, wide receiver 3 in Dynasty, and people want to convince themselves that he's like this wide receiver 1 upside guy, and he's just not that. He's 29 years old. He would have done that at this point in his career, so use the big game plus the prospect of Jaden Daniels being a franchise quarterback, which it looks like he is, to sell off Terry McLaurin and upgrade to somebody better. Now let's get into the quarterback position. Again, I usually do this from a super flex frame of mind, so one quarterback, bros, I'm sorry, but that's probably where I'm at with these guys. Looking at the quarterback buys, you guys can see that there's a lot of rebuilding buys here. Caleb Williams, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, some of the top quarterbacks in this year's class, some of the top quarterbacks from a Dynasty rookie standpoint that we were all drafting. 101 with Caleb Williams, probably like 103, 104, 105 with Drake May, 106, 107 with J.J. McCarthy. I don't think the thesis has changed for any of these players. I mean, Caleb Williams has gone out there and looked like Caleb Williams. The only problem is that the offensive scheme that he's in is not doing him any favors right now. And he's making mistakes, but he looks like a rookie quarterback. But I'm using the fact that Jaden Daniels looks a little bit better, and the fact that Shane Waldron is kind of ruining this offense as a buying window on a potentially generational quarterback. He's still a first-round Dynasty asset for me. He's still a top 8 Dynasty quarterback for me. So if you can use Andy Dalton in a first to go after him, if you can use, this one trade here, Trevor Lawrence in a first to go up and get to Caleb Williams, or this Joe Burrow, Rashad Bateman trade, you want to get a little bit younger at the quarterback position, go after Caleb Williams in trades right now. I'm telling you guys, it's only a matter of time before he looks like the first overall pick, and I think he already kind of does on a lot of different levels right now. Drake May and J.J. McCarthy aren't playing yet, and we knew this. J.J. McCarthy was ruled out for the whole season with a knee injury, and I think it's actually bullish how good Sam Darnold looks in this offense right now for J.J. McCarthy. The fact that Kevin O'Connell is getting the best out of a quarterback that nobody wanted, that's been a backup for the last couple of years, that is great news for J.J. McCarthy. He has a chance to really climb in Dynasty value right now, and if you could sell off Bo Nix, Nick Chubb, and a third for J.J. McCarthy, and you're a rebuilding team, that makes a lot of sense. If you can sell off Michael Pittman, who's not even producing right now, for J.J. McCarthy, he's out of sight, out of mind. Go buy him right now. Same goes for Drake May. He hasn't played yet. getting Baker Mayfield for him. Again, Baker's more productive, but Drake May's ceiling from a value standpoint is much, much higher than what Baker Mayfield's is. And same goes for this deal. Trevor Lawrence, again, I like Trevor Lawrence. I still value him very similar to Drake May, but if you can get a running back upgrade there with Derrick Henry, that makes a lot of sense as well. Value accumulator type of trade is Tua Tagovailoa. I know he's a little bit risky right now because nobody knows if he's like ever going to play football again. But to me, I think this is very similar to the buying window we had on him in 2022. If he is going to come back, that means that neurologists and doctors that he consulted with said it's okay to play football. So I know all of us like to pretend to be doctors and say he needs to like never play football again, but he's consulting real medical professionals right now. If he was going to retire, we would have heard that by now. So for me, I think this is just a routine, serious concussion. Again, I'm not downplaying the health implications for Tua, but the neurologists and the brain people are telling him that it's okay to play football going forward. So I think that presents a buying window because there's a lot of risky opportunity on the open market for the Tua Tagovailoa manager who's probably panicking right now. So if you can get off of a bum quarterback like Deshaun Watson, get up to Tua Tagovailoa, go ahead and do it. If you can get off of Chris Godwin, who's a productive player right now, but he doesn't have as much value as a franchise quarterback and Superflex does, go up and get to Tua Tagovailoa. If you can get off of a risky quarterback like Anthony Richardson, get a stud receiver like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like this Tua and St. Brown deal for Richardson and Dell indicates, definitely go ahead and do it and take on that risk. I think it is worthwhile with Tua Tagovailoa. There's also a couple of contending buys here. Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, they also make sense if you guys are contending teams. Not much to say there. I just think they have good outlooks for the rest of the season because their teams are producing. And then a throw-in buy that's just like, if you make a big trade and you notice somebody has Aiden O'Connell on their roster, you could probably get him for nothing. And I do think that the Raiders are going to pivot to him at some point this season, and he's going to accumulate value as a result of that. So maybe throw him in if you guys can handle making that move. And then the QB sells. There's only two guys that really stood out to me as guys that are overvalued right now on the market, because I would say generally the quarterback position is pretty well valued on Keep Trade Cut right now. Sam Darnold, Justin Fields. Both of those guys are valued as like top 20 to 25 dynasty quarterbacks, and I just don't frankly view them that way. Sam Darnold is producing and he looks good and he's definitely accumulated value from where you probably like spent a startup pick on this guy, but Sam Darnold is a short-term asset, and Sam Darnold, even though he's 27 years old, might have a hard time producing in a different situation. Let's just say best case scenario right now. Sam Darnold produces, has a great season this year, and the Vikings go to J.J. McCarthy next season, which we all expect them to do, and Sam Darnold goes and signs a 2-year, $70 million deal with the Raiders or the Steelers or a team that probably needs a quarterback upgrade. Sam Darnold's probably not going to produce at the level that he did not in the Minnesota Vikings offense. I think we all recognize that Kevin O'Connell's really good with quarterbacks, and he's going to elevate the play of the guy that he has there. So for me, this is like a sell high window on Sam Darnold. He can do no wrong right now. He looks like the best quarterback in the league. He's probably one of the leading MVP favorites right now. And Sam Darnold, you can sell off for a tier up into a Nico Collins deal like you can see here. You can sell Sam Darnold off for first-round capital like you can see in this David Montgomery deal here. You can sell him off for a little bit more of a stable quarterback asset like Kirk Cousins and Amari Cooper in that deal there. So if you can sell off Sam Darnold for solidified assets like first-round capital or like a better wide receiver in a tier up, definitely go ahead and do it. And same goes for Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields, the prospect of, he can run and all this kind of stuff, but I don't believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers really believe in Justin Fields. If they do get the best play out of Justin Fields they possibly can, he is going to accumulate more value. So this is definitely a little bit of a risky sell, at least at this current point in time. If you have Justin Fields on your roster, keep monitoring how he's doing. If we get a 35-point Justin Fields rushes for 100 yards, he wins the starting job with the Steelers, I would actually probably hold Justin Fields because you didn't actually spend a whole lot to get him. Or if you held him through his like Bears days and now you still have him again, it's an accumulator of value that you would probably feel pretty comfortable with. But if you can sell off Justin Fields when he's playing kind of like a game manager and doesn't look that great right now, and you can get first-round capital for him like this, you have to sell him. You literally have to sell him for first-round capital. You have to sell him if you can punt him into Michael Penix Jr. like this trade. If you can sell him in a tier up for like Tyreek Hill or Jamison Williams, J.K. Dobbins like this trade here, I think you have to sell him at that point in time. It just is all a matter of how do people value Justin Fields in your league. That one is a little bit tougher. It is definitely going to depend league to league. Do you have a Justin Fields truther in your league? Do you not? That is where I'd be at with that. And then the tight end position generally is very well valued across the board. I think everybody kind of understands who the elite guys guys are. Everybody understands the middle of the pack, the guys that you want to swing for upside on. The only guys that really stand out to me are Brock Bowers, who is the Dynasty tight end 1 on both Keep Trade Cut and in my rankings, but it's not a big difference. And to me, I think that Brock Bowers has the potential, after the season is over, to be an untouchable Dynasty asset, a guy that goes in the first round of Dynasty Superflex startups. And right now, he's attainable. Now, I don't think it's going to be cheap. I think everybody understands that he's good and he's a hit. And if people drafted him 107, 108 or whatever in their rookie drafts, they're probably very excited about that pick. But if you can pivot from a, let's say, third or a second round Dynasty asset like Trevor Lawrence or like Brandon Ayuk into Brock Bowers, who could be a first round Dynasty asset, especially in tight end premium leagues, I think you have to do it. I think Brock Bowers could be, like I said, an untouchable dude going forward based on what he's done through the first 3 games of his career so far. He's commanding targets alongside a true alpha like Devontae Adams. He is one of the only elite tight ends in fantasy football right now that's actually living up to that elite tight end billing. So Brock Bowers, go send some offers for him, see what you can get him for, because I do think he has the possibility to be a top 12, top 15 Dynasty startup pick this offseason. So Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, this one will be pretty quick. I don't think that Isaiah Likely is the new tight end 1 here. I don't think that Mark Andrews is going to be running 6 routes a game or whatever he ran last week. I do think he's recovering from this injury, and it's taking him a little bit of time to come back. So if you can get Mark Andrews right now on the open market for like a second round pick and you need a wide receiver or a tight end production piece, definitely go out and send some offers, and vice versa. If you can sell Isaiah Likely for a better bet, a better asset like an Xavier Legette or a second rounder plus a piece, or get up to Keon Coleman like you can see here, definitely would recommend you go ahead and do that. I think both guys, Andrews has lost value, Likely has gained value, but there is a bit of a market overreaction to some degree, in my opinion. So see what they're worth on your open market and definitely go out and send some offers. Now, apologies, this was a little bit of a longer video, but you Dynasty trade nerds usually are okay watching long videos, so I didn't really mind doing it. Again, implement some of the strategies I talked about at the beginning of this video. Go and send some offers out involving these sells, involving these buys, and report back. Tell me what you guys got in the link in the description down below. You guys will get access to flockfantasy.com. Of course, all of the stuff that I broke down here is available on Flock Fantasy. Our Dynasty trade value chart, which we will continue to update every week, every 2 weeks or so throughout the season. Our My Teams feature, which you can use to actually properly evaluate your team. Our trade calculator, which you can use to determine if you're getting ripped off or not. You can actually get my opinion specifically. When you put in a trade, Mark Andrews, second round pick, you can see what I would do based on my opinion, based on my updated Dynasty ranks, which I update pretty much every week, if not every couple days. And then also too, you can use our trade finder to determine, what the market value is of some of these players. So everything I talked about in this video is available at flockfantasy.com. Promo code FSE gets you 7 days for free, 6 months for free annually when you sign up there, 30% off any of the packages. And again, if you sign up annually, you'll get a free voucher to use for a team review where me or Danny or whoever can break down your team and tell you exactly what you need to be doing for the rest of the season. So definitely take advantage of that feature if you want to. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.